Okay, so pretty much we're after Shabbos. So we're going to go into Shabbos itself. Um, since it's a little bit of a particular Shabbos instead of Pesach, it's at the same time we're having Pesach food and at the same time chametz. So we're going to discuss that and go into the schedule and so on. So the we should prepare and plan maybe just disposable if you are going to be eating things that may be getting into contact with chametz. Things should really be disposable because we don't really have a way to go and burn everything. So and can't put away things because the sale is going to start really a little bit before Shabbos because you can't make a kinyan for the chametz on Shabbos. So there's no way to put things away and things like that. So really, if people are going to use dishes with chametz, plates, napkins, or things like that, we should be able to dispose of them. In terms of chametz proper, the right thing is to only have chametz for the lechem mishnah. In other words, bread that we're going to have for the Seder. Everybody has to have at least an ounce of bread. So you have to calculate, make sure it's not just a little tubal kalach for a family of 20, because you're going to need more bread per person in order to bench after that. But we have to make sure there's enough bread and just keep it at a minimum for Moitzi, and again have enough to be chayv to benching Friday night and Shabbos by day. Keep in mind again, you're going to use maybe napkins to wipe your mouth with the bread or things like that. So all the things should be disposable. And if we did use napkin or other things like that come in contact with chametz, they have to be after that put in a bag, and either if you can be flushed or put outside on the curb in a plastic bag. And for that, if there is things that need to be put away in the chametz on Pesach, then make sure that they're not, those cupboards or whatever that you're going to use are not sealed in a way that you would have to unseal it, where that may be a problem for Shabbos. If you're going to use floss, if it's allowed, or in cases that you're allowed, people are bleeding, should be flossing, but if you want to use that, it should be cut before Shabbos. As in every Shabbos, it's good to have things open. All packages, containers should be open. If you're gonna a can, the plastic around the bottle, bags of things, ideally it should be open before Shabbos. That's the right way of doing this. Certainly, if you have cases of wine, they usually seal, so you have to rip the tape, or you have to cut letters. Some tapes have writing on it. You can't open it on Shabbos, so all those things should be prepared before Shabbos. It's also Erev Shabbos Hagodol, which should be Mavi Seder. It's like a regular Friday, so you have to be Mavi Seder, go to the mikveh, just like all the regular things. And we do, I think we mentioned that last week, we do try to avoid chametz, to keep the same format as we do every year, except for, again, for lechem mishnah we need for Shabbos. In general, it's best to be careful not to eat chametz if at all possible. Maybe kids could be makil, but in general, it's good to be machmir, not to have chametz, other than the Suda. Prepare all the candles that we're going to need. Keep in mind we have to light Shabbos candles Friday night. Then you have to have light candles Motzei Shabbos and light candle again Sunday night. So you need a 3-day candle or more, unless you have gas working, whatever works, but just have to keep that in mind in order to have the lights that you should be able to have for the Shabbos and Yom Tovim. When we eat Shabbos, Friday night, the bread, we have to be careful to eat in a way you're not going to have crumbs everywhere, and certainly you don't want crumbs in your Pesach dishes. So depending on your house and the setup and things like that, maybe you want to wash on the porch, on the outside, or a bag, or just be careful that the bread is not getting into your dishes and you don't get crumbs everywhere when eating. After eating the challah and any used napkins that we used or things like that, whatever could be flushed down the toilet should be flushed down the toilet. Things have to be, again, taken out, put in the plastic bag, put it on the curb, depending on your situation. If you have things you need to shake, so do it on the outside, do it over the toilet so you can flush it afterwards. But just again, you have to be careful that we don't get chametz anywhere, and be careful that the chametz should be disposed of before the zman on the Shabbos by day. Before eating actually the Shabbos, the Pesach food, which is real Shabbos food, is going to be a Pesach day pretty much. So you're not getting, Lakshan Kugel or other things like that. So basically, before you start eating the Pesach food, make sure you wash your hands, you rinse your mouth, so you don't have, your fork and it's the dishes problem. The food itself is not so much of a problem, but obviously the dishes, you don't want the dishes to get in touch with the chametz, contact with the chametz that you ate. Some people, again, depends on how your house is set up. You could eat on the porch, in the backyard, and then you go back inside the house and eat at the Shabbos table, on the regular dining room table, in order to do that. If you're going to be making hamletzi outside, then it may be best to make kiddush outside, because you have to make kiddush b'mokim suda. So, depending again on how to set up, if you could see from, let's say you make kiddush in your dining room, from your dining room you could see whether you're going to be eating the bread, that's fine. If it's a completely different area of the house, then probably best to make kiddush over there. And if you're already making kiddush somewhere else than the dining room table, then you should have some Shabbos candles over there also, because before you're making kiddush, you need to look at the candles, and bichlal, the candles should be where you have the suda. So if you have a few candles, maybe some of the candles could be set up in that different area. Again, if you're going to be making kiddush in a different area of the house, and from there you can't see them through the window or something like that, then you have to keep that in mind. If you're going to be eating over the earth or the grass, make sure that there's no liquid that spills onto the grass on Shabbos or Yom Tov, because we can do that. So that's something you have to be mindful if you decide to eat in a place where there is grass over there.
Can you say it again? So if I'm gonna eat the chametz, the challah, outside of the house, I should make the kiddush also outside of the house?
Yes, unless you could see from the window. If the window is right there, then it's good. You could see each other, and that's fine. But if it's a completely different area, then you have to do it. Okay. Same thing in terms of the becher. You're going to have the becher. You're making kiddush. Let's say it's together. If it is, make sure your becher, the Pesach becher, doesn't get in contact with the chametz, with the challah, right? Shabbos morning davening is very early, obviously. Now the zman is 11:21. Is the zman we have to finish eating chametz. Then you have another hour plus. It's at 12:23. Is the zman of bir chametz. So basically, we have to be finished with davening, coming back home, having a suda, and bench. I mean, depends how you work it out. But basically, we're gonna have to be finished the meal more or less by 11:30, let's say, or 11:23, something like that. Depending on 11:21 is man achilas chametz, when you have to finish eating the chametz. So davening, I'm not the one making up the times, but I don't know. Let's say it's going to be 8 o'clock. Finish at 10. This way you can go home 10:20, 10:30, depending how far you are, and you eat. And by 11:30, you finish the suda again. The chametz should be stopped by 11:21. So depending on the way it works out. So I'm throwing 8 o'clock in davening, but that's I'm sure there'll be an email coming out. Just
you have to.
Previously it was 7:30.
7:30. I
think it was
the time that was announced already. I'm not making the time. Whatever. I'm just throwing it 8 o'clock. If it's 7:30 was announced, I didn't hear about it. I don't know.
But can't I just eat the challah and then continue to eat and bench later after 11:30?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah,
You don't have to bench before, right? You just have to stop eating bread.
Correct.
You could bench at like 12:30 if you want to have non-chametz food.
That's correct. I mean, 12:30 is you can still eat after 12:30. It's just not chametz. 11, you have to do bir chametz. Now you have to get rid of your chametz by then. So technically, you could eat your challah, whatever crumbs you have, flush them down. We'll get to that exactly what has to be done, and then go back and eat chicken and potatoes. That's not a problem. So you just in terms of the chametz has to be finished, at that time. But again, sure, we'll set up because I don't think they're gonna wait for the last minutes. I don't think they're gonna make davening at 9. Let's say again, I'm just throwing numbers. I'm not making up the time. They're gonna work on davening at 9, so you could be 11, and you just have 5 minutes to come home and eat the bread, and then you bench. I don't think it's gonna be set up like that. But that's not my call. So I'm throwing 8 o'clock. That sounds like a right number, but whatever the powers that be will decide. Since it's at a Pesach, we do not eat all the things that go into the mortar and the charesis. That's it. Now people over here, people ask, can I eat eggs? Can I eat potatoes? The only things that we're careful about Erev Pesach, besides matzah, of course, is whatever goes into the mortar and to the charesis, which is romaine lettuce and chrein for the mortar, and then apple, pears, and nuts, walnuts for the charesis. So we don't eat that Erev Pesach, in other words, Shabbos. No apples, no pears, no walnuts, and no romaine lettuce, and no chrein. But anything else, potatoes and eggs, even though they're on the Seder plate, that's okay. Onions, even though on the Seder plate, that's okay.
Is that only from a certain time, or just the entire Shabbos day?
The entire day of Erev Pesach.
So Erev Pesach. So Shabbos day. Okay.
Shabbos day, right? So Friday night you could have an apple or applesauce or whatever it is from the day. That's the same for every year. And it's not. It just happens to be Shabbos this year, but that's Erev Pesach. We don't need those things, and the same first day of Pesach also. We don't need them until after the meal, or not the meal really, after the mortar and the koirach of the second Seder. In other words, as long as we're eating mortar and charesis, we don't eat them besides the Seder. So we finish with the mortar and charesis by koirach of the second Seder. After that, we don't have mortar and charesis, and therefore you could have already chrein with the fish the second night and compot after the meal the second night. But until then, no chrein and no charesis, so none of the ingredients that go into this, the making of them.
How about wine? What's with the wine?
Wine you could have. Now there is an issue at Pesach of why not to have too much wine, because it said it fills you up. So there's no issue of having wine, but not don't finish bottles. So that's Shabbos morning.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, Abel.
Okay, it's okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. So then, 11:21, we have to stop eating chametz. Before that, wash our hands, mouth in a sink. Obviously, not the Pesach, not the kitchen sink that you want to use for Pesach. You don't really want to rinse chametz there. And if you have floss that is prepared and you don't usually bleed when you floss, if you want, you could floss. And you still have about another hour and it's 11:23, so it's an hour and 2 minutes to benefit from chametz until the end of biur chametz. So by then, during that time, make sure you don't have any crumbs wherever you ate. If it's in the house or on your property, make sure you dispose of all of that and flush it down the toilet. If you have anything that may contain chametz, napkins that you use to wipe your mouth, things like that, you can either flush them down. Here we have an eruv, so you could put them on the curb and make sure that you make them hefker. They're not yours anymore. You abandon them and you get rid of anything that may have chametz. Check pockets or anything, kids you may have given them a piece of challah and they put them in the pocket. So you have to make sure that that's taken care of. And before the end of the biur chametz, 12:23, we have to say the kol chamira that we normally and typically say after biur chametz. Friday, we're going to go burn the chametz. We will not say the kol chamira. We're going to burn the chametz. We're going to say the yirotzim that we say, but not the kol chamira, because we still have chametz. We're not nullifying it. We're going to be using it for the meals. After we finish with the meal, then we're going to recite the kol chamira. And like always, we have to have an idea of what we're saying. It doesn't have to be a literal translation of kol chamira, but everyone should understand that means they have any chametz that I may know of or not know of, I'm completely mafkir. It's not mine. It's like dust. I don't want it. I don't care for it. I'm abandoning it. So we have to have an understanding of that. It could be recited in any language. It's typically done in Aramaic, but you could say it in English, Hebrew, whatever language you understand. Okay, so again, we recite this kol chamir. After that time, then we're not allowed to benefit from any chametz. We're not allowed to own any of such chametz, and we cannot have any chametz like that. It should have been sold, put aside, and so on. If we find chametz after the time on Shabbos, so if it's again before the zman of biur chametz, then you're okay. But after the zman of biur chametz, then you have to cover it on Shabbos and Yom Tov because it's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because there's nothing to do with it. anything you have no use and you can't do anything with it is muktzeh. So you cover it, and then after Yom Tov, Chol HaMoed, we have to burn it as soon as possible, or flush it down the toilet. And if someone is already holding it, for a reason, kid come up and say, "No, mommy, tati, look what I found," and they found some cookie behind the couch, then they're already holding it, and you could flush it down the toilet, because once you hold muktzeh, you could walk around with it and dispose of it after that. If you find chametz on Chol HaMoed, then we burn it immediately. Shabbos Hagodol, I'm coming back to Shabbos Hagodol in the afternoon. Good idea to take a nap. This way you could be rested for the Seder, especially for kids. And after the 10th hour, we don't make a big Seudah. I mean, there's not much to it to Seudah anyways, because you can't wash on anything. There's no chametz and there's no matzah. But, you don't want to have too big of a meal, finish the cholent and the potato kugel that is left, because you have to be a little hungry for the Seder. But at the same time, we cannot prepare anything for Motzei Shabbos, so we can't prepare yet for the Sdarim. We have to wait until after Shabbos. We daven a little bit earlier, Mincha, and after which we are going to say a lot of things. We have to recite Seder Korban Pesach, which we do Erev Pesach, and that we do that before Shkia. And before that, we are going to read the Hagodol also. So first the Hagodol from Avodim Hayinu that we do Shabbos Hagodol, Shabbos before Pesach, plus it's Erev Pesach, so then we have to say Korban Pesach. So that's, keep in mind, again, I'm sure there'll be an email with the Zmanim, but there's a lot of reading to be done after Mincha on Shabbos afternoon. Then we have, Motzei Shabbos is the Seder. We're going to daven Ma'ariv with Vatidiyenu, the Havdalah, which is inside of Ma'ariv, and then we can get ready for the Seder. The Chabad custom, of course, is to take the Shmona matzah, the round matzahs. We do not use egg matzahs on Pesach, certainly not for the Seder. If there's a matzah that has what we call a kful, like it folded, the dough folded over itself, and you could see from both sides. So then we do not use that part. Or there's a big bubble, which is by the area of how do you call it, an inch. So then we don't use that piece either. We cut it out and a little bit around it also. And, that part gets thrown away. We consider that maybe not have baked properly. And therefore we don't consume that. We don't eat it. So we don't have gebroks, as you know, which means we don't make the matzah wet with anything. And many are careful, even things are completely dry, to not put them onto matzah. And at the same time in vessels, we try to make sure that whatever plates, cups, anything like that is dry before we put matzah, or get matzah next to it if you put on the plate. Sometimes you could get, you have the matzah, and then you have the plate next to it, it gets full of crumbs. Make sure there's no crumbs, it's clean before putting any food in the plate. The minhag is that if anything that got gebroks on it, we put it aside until the last day of Pesach, which is the time when we use gebroks anyways. And because of the chumrah of gebroks also, for my machroinim, we don't put our finger by the lips, because usually in the mustache you have some matzah crumbs on the lips, and we don't want that to get wet. I'm going to mention kitnias briefly. Kitnias is all those things that we eat the seed itself, we plant the seed. Different details exactly what is considered to be kitnias, how it is, but basically it's whenever you eat the seed, and what you get is the seed. In other words, you plant the grain. Wheat is chametz. Let's say rice, for instance, right? You plant rice and you get rice, and the rice, the kernel, is what we eat. That is the thing. As opposed to a tomato, for instance, you plant a tomato seed and then you get a whole fruit around it. You don't eat just that seed. It's not the same. So obviously when you plant, you get more of the same. Plant rice, you get a whole plant. But what we eat is the same grain that we plant is what we eat. Something with corn, you plant the corn, you get more corn, but you eat the seeds of the corn. So in things that we eat the seeds, on Segam Yamin, that's part of the beginning of kitnias when we eat the seeds. Some other definitions. It gets a little bit more complex than that, but that's the basic idea. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so in your example of tomato, is pumpkin also kidneys, or it's not then?
Pumpkin is not kitnias.
Okay.
because again, you plant the
The
seed
same thing. Okay.
and you get a whole fruit around it. But then you have other things that may not be exactly like that, but you made them into flour. So that's also a problem. Or they get cooked and turns into a porridge, like a dough kind of thing. So those things also the hummus to have, that we also consider to be kidney. So simple examples are rice, buckwheat, corn, peas, beans, lentils, sesame seeds, mustard, chickpeas, tofu with soy, tofu, what?
You weigh in on quinoa, not for a final Pesach. I'm just curious.
Okay, if you're asking it's because you know it's a problem, so I'm not going to give you a final psak. Some say yes, some say no, like everything else. Ask your LOR, local Orthodox rabbi, and whatever it tells you to do. Quinoa has some of the definitions of the kitnius in the sense that it's the seeds that we eat, and you're not getting a fruit around it. It's the seed that we eat. At the same time, many poskim are of the opinion that it's only those grains or seeds that were known at the time of the poskim, the goinim and the chumrah of kitnius, it's rishonim really, and we don't add new chumras to that, new things to the list. Some say it doesn't make a difference. So again, the Alter Rebbe seems to be a machmir in some of those things. So that's why some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no. Now, kitnius, whenever necessary, could be used for the sick, the babies, children. No need to, let's say, formula, baby formula. But obviously, you want to have different utensils for that. You want to mix them with the regular Pesach things. But it could be used in case there's a need for it. Some medications may have cornstarch or other kind of things like that, which is kidneys. Corn is kidneys, but if it's necessary, then it's okay. We are allowed to derive hanoi. It's not also banoi. So if you have food that contain kidneys, I don't know, corn, things with corn for animals, that's okay. You're not eating it, you're just having a hanoi from that, that is okay. Some chumras for Pesach, I'm sure you're familiar with all of that. You're just going to mention some of those things, and it's based on the concept that the Arizal mentions, that whoever is machmir on Pesach of a mashu of anything, so we are guaranteed that he will not do an aveda by accident. Hashem is watching over him. So from the common chumras that we have is to peel or shell all the fruits and vegetables or nuts that we use. We take off the peel. The obvious reason is because they may be in contact with all kinds of things, so we want to remove that. Any leafy vegetables that cannot be peeled, we avoid. Try not to have them because it's hard to peel, lettuce, iceberg lettuce, or some things like that. So you're not going to be left with much if you decide to peel it. So we don't use those things. Romaine lettuce, obviously for the Seder we have to have it. Some use it after. Some say, well, if I had it for Seder, why can't I have it the next day? Some people are careful because we're machmir and say Seder I have no choice. But if I have a choice, why go there? There's a minute to have also a special pot for the boiling eggs. Same idea as the peel. You can't really, it's hard to boil an egg without the shell. And so therefore we can't peel the egg before it's cooked. So we have a special pot for that. And to boil and strain the sugar before Pesach. For those who want to have sugar, those who want to use that. And the idea is as follows. There is a din of bittul b'shishim before Pesach. In other words, if chametz will be mixed with something else, during Pesach it's never bottled. 1 drop of chametz within 1,000 gallons of whatever midas chicken soup will never be bottled. But before Pesach it's bottled b'shishim. So if there's a concern about certain things, many people actually have a chumrah. It's complicated, not many people do it, but some people do it, to cook everything before Pesach. And then you freeze it and you take it out. Why? So this way, in case there's chametz, as you cooked it before Pesach, it was mixed already together with everything else, and it could be bottled b'shishim, nullified 1 in 260. So because of that, some people say something with sugar. Might as well cook my sugar. This way, if there's any chance that there is something in it, then it's already mixed together, bottled b'shishim, and therefore I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem. As opposed to if you didn't cook it, then you take a spoon, and in that spoon somehow there is a bit of there's a kernel of wheat, then now you're putting that into your coffee, into your tea, or to whatever it is, and you're gonna have a problem. So there's that chumrah to boil it. Now, in terms of the chumrah of sugar, it's some say it is a chumrah, some say it's not a chumrah. In sense using sugar altogether. I'm not talking about boiling it, but using sugar altogether on Pesach. There's a story with the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab would not eat sugar on Pesach. He had a brother-in-law, this Rabbi Horenstein we spoke about yesterday. He was a Kohen. So Rebbe Rashab told him that you should say the Yiratzin after the Nasi, even though he's a Kohen, you know which Shevet is from. Same thing for the Levim. We got some Kahanim and Levim over here. But so this one, he had a sugar factory, and told the Rebbe Rashab, look, there is never an issue with wheat in sugar. That's just not the way it works. But just for you, I'm going to make a special run for Pesach. This way you can have sugar, and it's going to be mehadim and mehadrin, top of the top, new dishes, new everything. You'll be able to, make sure everything is fine. Okay. So the Rebbe just said fine, whatever. He wasn't excited, but he agreed. Came to the time for Pesach. Says, brought him the sugar. Sugar used to come in sugar loaf. So, which was like basically, it looks like a loaf of bread. The one I saw once, my grandparents had it once. Yeah, they kept it, as a souvenir or whatever. It was like standing upright, like a sugar loaf they have in Brazil. Standing upright, something like a mango, let's say, bigger one, upright. So they brought it to the Rebbe. His brother brought it to the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab looked at it, gave it a knack a little bit, cracked it a little bit. In the middle, there was a kernel of wheat. And the brother-in-law said, I've never seen anything like that. It's impossible that it happened. It had to be a miracle just for the Rebbe Rashab to make his point that I don't use it, and that's just the way it is. Because there's never sugar, bread or wheat that would get into the process. But whatever. So that's one story. They said that there was once in Lubavitch, there was the Rebbe Rashab had said a mimer, Shabbos Pesach, and then Shabbos morning, the Chayzerim went in to do Chazorah. And one of the Chayzerim was a little confused. It wasn't clear in the mimer. So somebody else made a joke, because he didn't have any sugar in his tea this morning. Because it's Pesach. So the Rebbe Rashab replied, I don't like when people copy me. So, you have stories one way, stories the other way, so to speak. So, some people use sugar, some people don't use sugar. Some people boil the thing and then nobody wants to touch it. So then, it just gets thrown after Pesach because people look at that syrup thingy and nobody wants it. So all kind of different things. But in any event, if you're going to use sugar, it's a good thing to boil it. We avoid as much as possible commercially processed foods. Try to as much as possible to eat only things that are homemade. Obviously, matzahs gets complicated, wine gets complicated, meat or other things that you may think are essential to your life. But in general, we try to avoid things that are made outside factories and so on. We cut down on spices. Radishes, there's a note from the Tzemach Tzedek or a roar from the Tzemach Tzedek not to eat radishes on Pesach. No particular reason. Actually, the Rebbe mentioned that. And it was the Seder, the Rebbe Rashab, there was a Seder, and they made the Seder in Yeshiva, and they prepared radishes, and the Rebbe went and said, don't you know that the Tzemach Tzedek said not to eat radishes on Pesach? Regarding garlic, every so often there's another debate regarding garlic. Is it the Chabad minhag not to eat garlic or not? This is something that's mentioned in Pri Megadim, which is before the Alter Rebbe and before Lubavitch, not to eat garlic. And the understanding of it is because they used to keep it either in flour, like wheat flour, in order to preserve it, or in order to chase away the mice. They shouldn't eat the wheat, so they would keep garlic over there. Whichever way it is, garlic and flour went along. It was together like that. So some say it was dried because garlic is in dried form, more or less, on the outside over ovens, so it absorbs from the food. But so there's a thing like that. Some said it was the same name of Rabbi Yankel Landau, was a Rav by the Rebbe Rashab, that there's no such thing as not eating garlic, not machmir. So many of today's Chabad Rabbonim look through all the shurim that people are giving for Pesach, things like that. Some people say, not to use it. Some people say it's okay. It was not a Chabad minhag per se. And the consensus seems to be if you never ate it, don't start. But if you're starting your own particular Pesach customs, then maybe whatever whatever you want, whatever you feel. We also have a custom not to eat food that fell on the floor, and if possible to peel it, you peel it. With kids, obviously, it gets complicated, like little children, I throw everything on the floor. And food and utensils also. So if utensil, a fork, or something fell on the floor, we put it away till next Pesach. We try to avoid that. Some people, I don't know, some people may have the 5-second rules, but in general, the custom is to avoid that. We don't drink alcohol on Pesach, even kosher Pesach alcohol, vodka or other things like that. That is something that, from Rabbi Kiva Eger mentioned that, and there's no reason. And the Rebbe mentioned if had Rabbi Kiva Eger given a reason why not to have mashka on Pesach, we could argue with him, but he didn't give any reason, so you can argue with him. One reason the Maggid gave, the Mizitcher Maggid says that the matzah is the bread of healing. It's like medicine. And people know you don't mix alcohol and medicine. So that's one of the things the Maggid said. Not to eat food prepared outside one's own home. Goes back to being processed. Some do not eat dairy foods. So there are two parts to that. One is because it's processed outside the home and we try to cut down on it. There was another chumrah, and that is because of the way the animal are fed. After a few days of Pesach, the animal that ate, the wheat or whatever they're being fed in the farm, that's coming out in the milk. So, and therefore you're having milk, I'm going to say based on chametz. It's not exactly like that, obviously. But there is the chumrah, especially in the farms, I don't know how it is nowadays, but the shtetl, it was straw and hay, there was chametz all over the place. So people avoided that altogether. Another thing that Rabbi Shapiro mentions, that usually people didn't have the money to buy 2 sets of dishes for Pesach, fleshik and milchik, and therefore they did whatever was essential, which is to have fleshik because you have to have for Yom Tov and Shabbos, and they did a week without milchik because they couldn't afford another set of dishes. So that's another reason why people don't have milchik. And for the same reason in terms of being machmir, not to have things that were processed outside of the house or things like that. Some people avoid tea, coffee, because again, it was processed. There is some issue, I don't know how real it is or not. The tea bags, in terms of some starch in it or the string, some people are careful about that. In terms of kidneys or starch that they put in there, things like that. But I assume if you buy kosher Pesach tea, you don't really have you shouldn't have a word to worry about that. And mention also, since there is a inyan, this idea of bittul b'shishim before Pesach, so some have the custom to cook as much as they can before Pesach. So this way, if there is a chash or whatever it is, then it's bittul b'shishim. So these are basic chumras. None of them really are specific to Chabad. These are all things mentioned in Sfarim. But Chabad seems to have acquired and been careful about a lot of those chumras. So that's Pesach altogether. We'll still have some time, so we're going to start with the first night of Pesach. We'll go through davening and then the Seder. So davening, Ma'ariv, we obviously have to wait for Shabbos to be over. Can't start earlier, even though maybe Erev Yom Tov sometime we could start earlier, but not for the studying, and not that Shabbos. We recite V'tadiyenu, as we said before in Shemon Esrei. If one forget to say V'tadiyenu, then after Shemon Esrei, you could say Baruch Hamavli Min Kodesh LeKodesh. Kodesh, usually after Shabbos, we say Kodesh LeChod, because we enter the week there. But here is Shabbos, it's Yom Tov, sorry, so it's Kodesh LeKodesh. So before doing any melacha that would normally not be allowed on Shabbos, which essentially would be lighting fire. So if a person is rushing to have a cigarette after Shabbos, or to light the Shabbos candles or a Yatsa candle or something like that, before you do a melacha, make sure to say Baruch Hamavli Min Kodesh LeKodesh. Something by women lighting Shabbos candles. If they don't daven, then you should say Baruch Hamavli. We have to light the candles, let's say Shabbos, from an existing flame, and we light Ladik Neshel Yom Tov and Shechiona. Many of the custom that if there's a candle that went off during Shabbos, that you light Shabbos candle Friday night, and then one candle went off, then after Shabbos we light it. So that's something that we don't do on Yom Tov. If a man is lighting the candles, somebody is home alone, so then we don't say the man that will not say Shechianu by the candle, they say Shechianu by Kiddush, which is coming. So that's Ma'ariv. Right after Shemoneh Esrei of Ma'ariv, we cite Halal, the entire Halal, both nights of Pesach. When we said the entire Halal, we're not allowed to interrupt, except for things that we're allowed to answer in the middle of brachas of Shema, Krishma, the same degree of interruption. This is true, by the way, anytime we say Halal with a bracha. So it's not just Pesach night. It's Yom Tov by day also. Rosh Chodesh is a little bit different because there's no chiyuv, it's a minhag. And depending on how we do it, some people, the rates it's mentioned to do it Rosh Chodesh by Asar minhag is that we yotze with the bracha of the chazan. So you didn't say the bracha. So the interruption is less important. Many do say the bracha anyways, so then you have to be careful not to talk also. It's better to say the Halal with a minyan. Actually, that's also true for all the Halals. There's a sefer by Rav in England, Rabbi Chaim Rappaport. He brings that story from the Rebbe Rashab, because the question is, if a person enters and since you have to say Halal with a minyan, and you walk into shul, let's say, or you're not up to davening with a minyan, and they're up to Halal, and you're behind, should you say Halal with a minyan before davening, before Baruch Shama? After Baruch Shama, you can do it. Let's say before Baruch Shama, should you say Halal then? So he brings a story from the Rebbe Rashab that says that whenever there was Halal, the Rebbe Rashab would make a point to davening with a minyan. Even though a lot of times he davened on his own, at his own pace, but whenever it was Halal, he made a point to daven with a minyan. Halochos could have said Halal with a minyan and then daven. He didn't want to do that. So it seems to me that it's best to say Halal where it belongs, not before davening, but in the order of davening. We know in general that was the opinion of the Arizal, not to skip around davening. There are a lot of halochos. If a person comes to shul and you can't need to catch up with a minyan, you could skip this, you could skip that. So we know from the Arizal that should keep the davening in the same order, not to mix all the the hashpois that come. So you should respect that's the same thing as Halal. You should try to say Halal with it. Yes?
I was going to say, but if it's comparing it to the Berchos Kriya Shema, I mean, it's the same thing. Kriya Shema, you're supposed to, if you come in and Kriya Shema, you should at least, say Kriya Shema with the minyan.
Right.
Right.
No, here I was talking about in terms of answering what you're allowed to answer, what you're not allowed to answer. That was the comparison of the brachas of Shema.
Right.
For bringing it up. So really, we should daven with a minyan and say Halal with a minyan. If a person forgot to say the Halal, then as soon as you realize that, we should say Halal. And for whatever reason, a person said only a half Halal, then you have to say the entire Halal again without a bracha. Then we have certain items that we need to prepare for the Seder. So theoretically, or ideally, you had everything prepared before Shabbos. In other words, the zroya was roasted, the salt water was made, the horseradish was ground, but in case there's certain things you're allowed to do it. So you're allowed to roast the chicken neck on Yom Tov. Obviously, Shabbos you can't do it on any of that, but here is Yom Tov. You're allowed to roast it, but you're going to have to eat it a little bit during that day. Since you cannot eat it the night of the Seder, so the following day, during the day, on that same day of Yom Tov, take a little bit of the meat from that chicken neck if we ate from it. We're not allowed to grind the horseradish on Yom Tov. If it was not done before, then you could, chop it finely on Yom Tov. Or if you cannot do that, then just romaine lettuce. If we forgot to wash and to check the romaine lettuce for bugs, you could do that on Yom Tov. If one person forgot to prepare the charesis, to grind the charesis on Yom Tov, you could do it with the shinoi. For instance, you hold the grater backwards, or you grate directly instead of doing it in a bowl or in a plate, you grate it on the table. Salt water could be prepared regularly on Yom Tov. So, getting to the Seder, ideally we should start the Seder as soon as possible, not to delay. So we get home after davening, it should be ready as soon as possible to get to the Seder. every man and boys of a bar mitzvah should have, at least every bar mitzvah should have their own kaida, and each person, or meaning is each person arranges their own kaida after returning from shul. Whenever arranging the kaida, the Rebbe would quietly read out the instructions in the Hagodol or the Seder, and the Rebbe would say, what to do, and so on. We place.
What can you do this year as far as preparing the table on Shabbos? So could you have a clean table? You obviously can't prepare the kaira, but
You can prepare the kaida, you can set up the table. You can
it's
clean,
clean, but you can have a nice house, right? I imagine.
right, that you can do, yes, yes. Yeah. So we put a plate or cloth under the kaida. Then we have the matzahs. Ideally, the matzahs should be, of course, unbroken if possible, and concave shaped, like a little, like a bowl type of thing, right? And we put the matzah. This is something that separates between each matzah, a cloth, a napkin, and then on top of that, we put another cloth, and on which we're going to put all the items. If you have the plate on the bottom, altogether you have 10 ingredients, 10 items. You have 6 on the kaida, 3 matzahs, that's 9, with a plate on the bottom, that's 10. The plate on the bottom is the idea of malchus, that's the 10th, that's the keli that contains everything, that's the plate that you have. The first night, we do what's called yak nahaz, which is yain, kiddush, ner, havdalah, and zman. In other words, you have yain, which is be'er pragofen, that's how we start. Then the kiddush, the bracha of kiddush. Then ner, we look at the candles. We don't hold the candles. We don't put 2 flames together. We just look at them. And then ner havdalah. You see the paragraph that is havdalah. And then zman shechianu. That's the order of things. Okay. If you mixed up the order, that's okay. During the ner, we don't look at our nails like we would do normally in Motzei Shabbos. We do not do that. If we forgot to set the bracha on the candle for whatever reason during Kiddush, then you could do it later. You do it after or during the time of the second meal. The second cup, sorry, not second meal, the second cup. If a person remembers after the second cup, but before finishing the afikoman, you should recite the bracha of ner and havdalah then over a cup of wine. I don't mean just the ner, I mean the havdalah part, ner and havdalah also. Because you can't eat before havdalah, so really, before you eat it, any part, you should make sure to say havdalah. And you need a cup of wine. And you're not allowed to add more cups. So you should do the havdalah over the second cup, and then you eat the karpas before the havdalah, and or later during the meal. If a woman says her own kiddush, she is alone. She should say shechianu. Shechianu she already said on the candles. And it's not just alone, because the night of Pesach, really, all the women also have to make kiddush, because that's the first of the 4 cups, and women also obligated to have the 4 cups. So every woman will say kiddush, but shechianu she will not say because she already said shechianu on the candles. After we drink
Sorry, why isn't it the same? I mean, you mentioned like, so if a guy is by himself, so he doesn't say shechianu by candles, but he says by kiddush. So why is it the opposite?
Because the main thing for women is that the main mitzvah, so to speak, is lighting the candles. So therefore, that's when they're going to say shechianu. And the lighting candles is not a man's mitzvah. Shechianu for the man is mostly by kiddush. Therefore, he should wait and say shechianu then. That he lights the candles, he has to. I'm going to say is just, second best. Ideally, he should have his wife lighting the candles, let's say. And so he has to do it. He has to light the candles. But really, it's lighting candles is more a woman's mitzvah. And therefore, shechianu is for him. Then we lean on the left, as we know. And that's going to be for all 4 cups of wine. And what else? Ideally, we take red wine. One of the reasons is for the red is to remind us of the blood of the Jewish children that were slaughtered. So even though you have white wine that's maybe better quality, we want to look a little red. So if you're going to be using white wine, then put a little red in it. It should look reddish. or the red grape juice to make it look red. When we drink the 4 cups the night of Pesach, we drink them all in one shot. Typically, it says that all year we should drink the wine in the not in one shot because it looks like you're gluten. So you don't want to drink them all in one shot. But the night of Pesach, it says that you have to do it. The minimum of drinking is revis, which is 44 milliliters. That's the the minimum that that we have to do it. After that, after the first cup, we could drink water or any other liquid between the first and second cup. And since if we intended to have other drinks after Kiddush, we don't have to say special bracha. That's included in the Hagofen. Children are hungry, they're allowed to snack, but better if you could wait until after Magid. That's a good thing. That depends obviously on the child, on the age, and so on. Then after Kiddush, we're going to Urchatz. We wash our hands. We don't say the bracha, but everything else we're careful about. I'll make sure our hands are dry, make sure we wash the full hand, all the other things that we do. We dip the karpas before making the bracha, and when having the karpas, we should have in mind the modern and the koirach. In other words, the other plants, the other vegetable that we're going to have later. Now we're eating a piece of onion or potato, depending on what you're having. So we're going to have later the modern. That's going to be also adama. And the morer is for 2 things, koirach, morer and koirach, the morer itself, and then for the sandwich. So we have to have in mind that the hadama that we're making now is going to cover those things also. The Rebbe would add a little salt then to the water before, then we dip it 3 times, and after that the karpas is not returned on the table. So even if you have more karpas, we don't put it back on the table, on the kaira, not the table, on the Seder plate, sorry. And we are trying to be careful not to eat a kazais of it, because then it's a shayla bracha achrena, so we want to avoid that. We eat less than a kazais of karpas. There are many reasons why we do that. One, that we do the karpas. One is obviously to make the children ask questions. You know that all year we don't, when we eat after Kiddush, we start the meal, and here we're not starting the meal. We're having some dips, and not necessarily yummy dips. And that's one of the reasons to make children ask questions to get them involved. The reason for the salt water, one of the things is the tears of the Jewish people. Another one is that they went to the mikveh before Korban Pesach, so the water looked a little cloudy after you had 600,000 people that went to the mikveh. So that's a reminder of the salt water. All kind of different reasons for that. After that, we move on to yachatz. Yachatz, we take the middle matzah, we cut into 2, break them into 2. While it would still under the kaira, we don't take it out. While it's in the kaira, we break the matzah into 2. Then the larger piece we break into 5 pieces, wrap them up into something, a cloth, a Ziploc bag, or something like that, and we put it in between the pillows that we have laid out for Heseber, for leaning on the side. That's where we would do that. And if it breaks into more than 5 pieces, then we'll take 1 back. We have to make sure that it's 5 and not more than 5 pieces. As you know, we don't have this custom to snatch the afikoman. The Rebbe says it's not good chinuch to teach the kids to steal things. Whenever we say in the Hagodol to raise the kaida, or to lower it, or to remove it, misalkin, you move it to the side, really our custom is to either uncover the matzahs or cover the matzahs. So when you're supposed to bring the kaida Seder plate, we're going to uncover the matzahs. If it says you remove it, misalkin, then you cover the matzahs on the kaida. And the Rebbe would make sure that when he would be uncovered, the matzah would be uncovered, all 3 matzahs would show, which means the top matzah stick out a little bit, you would see it. The middle matzah, make sure that, twirl around it, so to speak, so you have the piece of matzah, you only half. That half should also stick out, and the bottom matzah. So you create the space, then you can see all 3. Then with the top one, cover all 3, uncover all 3 when you do that. Then we move on to the manishtana with tatich filled by the fragan, vehi she'amda. So Visha Hamda again, we cover the matzahs because whenever we use wine, we cover the bread of the matzah. So we're going to cover the matzah, then we'll put it down, uncover the matzah. After the 10 plagues, where we poured also a little bit of wine. So, and then Detzach Chadash Ba'achav, we're also going to cover the matzah. Whenever we have wine used, well, the matzahs are covered. During the 14th Dayenu, we don't pause, we don't stop, we just recite them together. When we say matzah zu, we hold the Levi and Israel matzahs by the cloth, and we say mareh zu, we put our hands over the mareh and the chazeres, which is the one you'd be used for kairach. When we say lefichach, which is the end of the magid, so we are covering the matzah before picking up the cup, and in the Hagodol it doesn't say that. The Hagodol says differently, but that's not how we do it. The Hagodol says from the fichach till the end of the bracha, you hold the cup. That's not our minhag. We hold the cup for the first paragraph, the fichach, and then we put it down by, hallelujah. Then you have 2 paragraphs for hallel, halukah and betzeis, and then we pick it up again by lefichach. So it's altogether 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is lefichach, hold the cup. After that paragraph, put it down for 2 paragraphs of hallel, and then we'll pick it up again for the bracha at the end. And the first night of Pesach, it's printed in the Hagodol, but since it's Motzei Shabbos, we revert the order of the Pesachim and Zvachim. Then this year we're going to say min ha-Zvachim u'min ha-Pesachim, min ha-Pesachim min ha-Zvachim. And then the second night, which is not Motzei Shabbos, we said min ha-Zvachim u'min ha-Pesachim. And again, it's printed in the Hagodol, just bringing it out, pay attention to that. And then after that, we're going to drink the second cup of wine, leaning on the side, and after that, we are going to wash for Moitzi. And there's a lot of things that involve in that, and a lot of different steps. If possible, and it's not always possible, unless you're really home alone, but I don't wish that to anybody. But, if you have people and kids and things like that, it's not going to be possible. But if possible, not to talk for the moment you start eating matzah until after you finish kairach, or at least not to talk about things not related. So if we talk about things related, okay, now we're doing this, now we're doing that. Chaim Yankel, make sure you have your matzah. All those things are related to that. Who needs more piece? Who needs another piece of mortar? Who needs another piece of matzah? All of those things are related. But because we had the bracha on the matzah and the mortar, we want to make sure that they go all the way, they cover also kairach, which is the sandwich. For that reason, the Rebbe would read, as we said before, the Rebbe would read every paragraph, anything, every instruction in the Hagodol. So before going to wash, the Rebbe would read all the instructions for all the things through kairach, because this way we avoid the talking. So before we're going to wash the Sidayim, like we always do for bread, and we come back. Now, the night of the Seder, there's 2 brachas on the matzah. Obviously, hamaitzi because it's bread. But the night of the Seder, there's a mitzvah to eat matzah. The rest of Pesach, there's no mitzvah to eat matzah. That's just only bread you have access to. And so happens to be that you also have to wash, because Shabbos Yom Tov you have to wash, Chol HaMoed is a good thing to wash, but there's no mitzvah per se to eat matzah. The only time we say the bracha, Asher Kiddushonu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivonu, Hashem commanded us to eat al achilas matzah is the night of the Seder. So we're going to recite also. Now, as always, whenever we say hamaitzi on Shabbos or Yom Tov, you have to have 2 loaves of bread, like a Mishnah. In your Seder plates, you have 2.5 matzahs. 2 are whole, and 1 is half. So when we are going to say the first bracha, which is hamaitzi, we're going to be holding all 3 matzahs. Basically, the first one, the top one, and the lower one are whole matzahs. This way you have the 2 matzahs. Then we're going to drop the bottom matzah, and we're going to say Asher Kiddushonu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivonu al achilas matzah on the matzah and the half that we have. And it's important to have the half because we call it lechem oini, the bread of poverty, and we're acting like a poor person that his meal is half a loaf of bread, doesn't have a complete thing. So that's why we have the half over here. Keeping in mind when we said the bracha Asher Kiddushonu, that will also go and cover kairach. because the matzah of koirach is also part of the mitzvah of eating matzah that night. We have to make sure, as we are going to wash and eat matzah, that everybody at the table has two kazais, two kazais of matzah. Really, that's what you should need. At least one. Now, not everybody has a Seder plate. So make sure, and you don't necessarily have on your Seder plate enough to give out to everybody. So make sure, perhaps as everybody's washing, to prepare little bags or something like that. Everybody has a kazais of matzah. Kazais of matzah is about half a matzah, a little less, depending on the thickness of the matzah and so on. But you can have, every person, every woman basically, every person who doesn't have a Seder plate should have their matzah ready to come. So as soon as we come, we already have the matzah that they need. The person who has a Seder plate is going to take now a kazais after you wash, when you come back, you said the brachas, take a kazais, which is about half a matzah from the top, and the half matzah from the middle, or kazais from the middle matzah, and eat them together, leaning on the left. So that's that. We do not dip the matzah in salt, and we should eat it without interruption in the shortest amount of time possible, ideal within 4 minutes. So that's for the matzah. We'll go through Moder and Koirach, and then we'll stop over here tonight. And that is the Halochos. So Moder, we take kazais of Moder. Kazais could be combined together, romaine lettuce and horseradish. And we're a little bit more lenient for Moder in terms of what's a kazais. It's 19 grams. And we dip the Moder into the chareses. Now the chareses, we mentioned that last week. Our minig is that when we make the chareses, we don't add wine to it. Well, the wine is going to be added now. The exception to that is when the Seder is Friday night, and then you're not allowed to add wine to the chareses because you're making a paste, and that's not allowed on Shabbos. So, but this year it's not Shabbos. It's Motzei Shabbos. So we're going to add now a little bit of wine to the chareses. What the Rebbe would do is he would take a little bit of the chareses from the Seder plate and put it in his plate, Kiddush plate. So there's a lot of wine over there that's spilled, and he would put it in there. And so we take from that horseradish and dip it in the chareses. They would dip it 3 times. And then we said the bracha el achilas morer, sheki deshono el achilas morer. We do not lean on the left for the morer. Then we're going to the koirach, the sandwich. We're going to take a kazais of matzah from the bottom matzah. We haven't touched it yet. The third matzah on the bottom. We're going to take a kazais from that. We're going to put the romaine lettuce and chareses and the chrein, in there. What we're going to do is now, we're going to take the inside chrein, which is normally not going to touch the matzah, and dip that into the dry chareses, not the one with the wine that doesn't have the wine. And the Rebbe would shake it off, wrap it up back into the lettuce, and have our sandwich. And we, how do you call it? And then we say Kenasa Hillel, and then we eat the koirach leaning on the left. Last thing we're going to do Shulchan Aruch. Custom is to eat the egg first. We dip the egg into salt water, and then we'll remove the kaida from the table, and we're basically finished with that. We don't have to lean on the left when eating the meal, and pace yourself during the meal because we're going to have to eat the afikomen at the end. So we're going to stop here for tonight. Any questions? No? Okay. So have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.